right, welcome back to Camille Reads, and this time we are reading Jordan Blue by Danielle Martin, although she goes by Danielle McCallister now. I don't know much about this book. A friend of mine, this is her daughter, and she said she would love for me to read it, so I'm going to give it a try. It is completely self-published, so Jordan Blue. Oh yes, first lines, always important. So this is one of a book that is separated into different points of view. So we are starting out with Jordan. I was 17 years deep in idiosyncrasy when I met Max. It's a solid first line. I like that. Very gripping, intriguing. Like, ooh, what does that mean? You know, I assume Jordan is 17 years old, but what are their idiosyncrasies? And who is Max? Let's find out. All right, so end of the first chapter. I like it so far. Definitely like the writing style is something that you have to like get into, right? So from Jordan's perspective, they have I don't know disabilities super well, so I'm not going to, since they haven't said what their disabilities are, I'm not going to guess. But they do have at least one, if not several, idiosyncrasies, as they like to call it, that they have to deal with on a regular basis. And I love that kind of book. I love getting into people's heads and really understanding how they see the world, because so often, especially people with severe disabilities, like he has, or sorry, I don't know if, did Jordan say their gender? I don't think so. Okay, so I'm going to try to be very good about using they. Jordan displays as selectively mute and has a stimming that is very visible. The one that the chapter ends with is flapping their hands in front of their ears, and they have to have a aide with them all day throughout school. So I very much remember this when I was a kid and how much stigma there was. So this starts in 2002. I don't know if it continues to go, but oh man, we were still using the R word, and that's what I just like skipped to the first line of the next chapter, and so sad. I hate that we used to use that. I hate that there was so much stigma. I mean, there still is quite a bit around disabled people, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I would love to look into, I don't know Danielle's background, and I'm sure she did quite a bit of research, or even is in the field, or perhaps has a disability. I don't know, but like I said, it's a mind shift, because Jordan in particular speaks very high, or thinks very high-mindedly, and so it's their descriptions of how they experience the world is really intriguing. So let's see how it goes as we get into Max's chapter. Hello, beautiful. Thank you for gracing. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Yes. Really, a book is so much better when you have an animal on you. I feel so honored whenever she sits on my lap. Thank you. Oh, it's very sweet. This is a sweet book so far. I will say, my first minor critique is the chapters are a little bit too short. I am the sort of person who prefers to really sink my teeth into whatever it is I'm reading. So short, chunky chapters just don't work for me. That's a me thing. So I guess I just better get over it. Okay, question. I am interested in. So Jordan already alluded to the future. So I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be written as a reflection from an adult perspective on their teenage years. I don't know how I felt. I don't know. I don't think I like this sentence, is what I'm going to say, or this sentiment. My mind continued to wander around these angsty kinds of teenage thoughts that were both deep and naive. Now, I know that some teenagers recognize that they are naive, but most teenagers think that they know better than everybody, which is just, part of the experience, right? So this feels like a very un-teenager-like thought to have. So I'd say basically I would prefer a little bit of more clarification if this is a reflection from adulthood and the narration is supposed to be an adult. Totally okay with that. Okay. Here's another thing that I find really interesting. This part that I'm reading right now, Jordan is just explaining how the relationship between him and Max starts. It's a friendship of Jordan is obsessed with guitars but has never been allowed to play or touch a guitar because people are worried that he's going to break the instrument. But Max, who is also a senior in high school, plays a guitar and he brings it to school, plays it on his lunch break, and so Jordan approaches full speed and Max doesn't react the way that most people do and recognizes that Jordan wants to touch the guitar and he allows him to, and he touches it with reverence, and so just breaking down some of those barriers. But now Jordan is explaining rather than us having a scene where the friendship begins because Jordan listens to Max. So sometimes Jordan comes over, Max immediately gives him the guitar to play with, but sometimes he starts talking and Jordan listens to him, which is very sweet. I would like to actually see Max for the first time start talking, and from Jordan's perspective, see how Max is unsure, is he capable of listening to me? Does he want to listen to me? Sometimes it's hard to tell when people with a disability where they don't emote in a commonly recognizable way, then it can be difficult to know if they want to or even can reciprocate. And so I actually wouldn't have been surprised if this story was about just Jordan and Max having a friendship over music. That's totally fine. So today we are drinking blueberry rooibos. I love this tea so much. My parents get it for me from Southern California. There's a really cute little shop called The Farmer and the Cook. They sell groceries, and also it's a little restaurant in there, and they make food from the groceries that they sell. But they have this really lovely tea, and so they send it to me periodically, and I drink it. I try not to drink it too fast, so that I'm sure they wouldn't mind sending it to me more often. But anyways, it's super delicious. All right, we just met the third character, Aurora, and we also found out that this takes place in Avery, Oregon. But that makes sense because Danielle grew up in Oregon. And of course, she writes it very lovingly. So I'm excited to find out about this Aurora person. The biggest thing that ties all three of these characters together is that they're different, like on the outskirts of society. So it's a good theme. Okay, so let's talk about passive writing. There's nothing wrong with passive writing, but it can be hard to get into the story. I actually am reading a traditionally published book right now that is very passive, and I don't really care about the characters. I'm not really invested in it. That's not necessarily going to be the case in this book, but I'm 28 pages in, and there are a lot more scenes that are explained rather than shown. Like, Aurora has just met Dolores, who she's going to be rooming with, and she seems like a really interesting character based on her like specific situation, and the advertisement that she put up was very quirky. But then we just get a couple of paragraphs where Dolores explained that since she didn't want a traditional renter boarding in her home, there had been a few people that tried to take advantage of staying there without having to pay rent. I would love to hear that in her voice, because it sounds like she has a really interesting way of speaking, and that like grabs me more and makes me want to hear more about Dolores, and I can learn a lot more about Aurora through their interaction. So that just something to consider. There's a place for this more passive writing where we're explaining things and it helps move the plot along, right? But I would ask myself, why are we explaining it? Is it necessary if I don't feel like I should write a whole scene about it? I do really love Dolores. She's quite the character. So far, my favorite side character. Now, I feel like we're going to have to discuss this every single time with these independent books. When there is a formatting either error or something that is not standard in traditionally published books, it doesn't mean that the book isn't worth reading. It is very frustrating when people say, oh, I don't read independent books because they don't have editors. They do have editors, just they're not necessarily in the industry. So one thing that we're finding in this book is that the dialogue is not separated. So this paragraph here has Dolores asking a question, and then Aurora answering, and then Dolores calling her out for her BS, which is really funny. But anyways, that's all, like, it's not dialogue, and then next line is new dialogue from a new person, and then dialogue from a new person. It's all part of one paragraph, but it's not confusing. It's totally fine. It's literally just the author's choice to do it this way. And so, anyways, anyone who thinks that they shouldn't be reading indie books just because they look a little bit different than traditionally published books, and that's not always the case either. So you gotta give it a try. So that's my plug for independent books today. All right, well, it's going to be another book with a love story, which is fine. That's a very common trope, and it's important. Lots of people do really love a good love story, so I'm not going to fault it for that. I will say, though, sometimes when a character meets another character that has already been established, Max is meeting Aurora for the first time, and he doesn't end up describing her. And I really would have liked to see her from his perspective. Instead, we get something a little less. It's more about his emotions towards her, which is fine. You know, he's like, oh, wow, she's gorgeous. Yeah, I would have liked a little bit like more specifics to go along with the emotions of meeting her for the first time. So, but let's see how Aurora reacts to Max. Okay, Aurora's was much better, so she gave a lot more details. His long, curly hair as he advanced in line. His chocolate brown hair was salted with what I assumed to be sawdust, and he smelled like a musty forest. Oh, so evocative. It's great. Um, this one is a little cliche, but I love it. I fell completely into the blue pools that he gazed out of. It was some sort of enchantment. There was nothing short of intoxication. So when I first met Aurora, I was thinking that she was a lot more like jaded and, that like really rough around the edges. And I had just immediately assumed, based on the fact that she rolled up in a bus to a new town that she didn't know, and had no plan of necessarily staying there, but when she stepped off the bus, she said, "This is it. This is the place where I'm stopping." So I thought, oh, she's going to be that, prickly person who's had a really hard life and has put up all these walls. But now, based on the way that she's reacting to Max, she does have walls, but they're not nearly as like, I don't think they're going to be nearly as big of an obstacle as I had originally assumed. So, but we shall see. We're still early on in the book.